Okay, I'll start with a poem which was included in this anthology last year, which I wasn't able to attend the launch, unfortunately. So I'll read my poem now. And it's called Kintsugi, which, as you probably know, is a Japanese art of repairing broken things, especially ceramics, with gold, so that the repaired thing is more valuable than the original. Kintsugi. Her scribbled prescription was a pledge, not of cure, but of easement, like that cardboard wedge under our dining room table, or the taped glasses of the shopkeeper who dished out aspirin in Kulani. Waiting in the pharmacy, I considered mother's dentures, granddad's truss, the wooden hand great-grandfather wore, all the crucial repairs we carry with us, sticking plasters on our cracks, patches on our punctures, or fractures held together by judicious mending, golden joinery, the beauty in broken things.
Yes.
Donald mentioned archaeology, and in my latest collection I have a number of poems based on archaeology. There's a summer archaeological school in Trim, County Meath, where I live, where students from all over the world, particularly from colleges in America, come to excavate an old monastery. And it's fascinating to see these young college students excavating, especially excavating the graveyard part, so that they have to excavate the skeletons of old people, but also tiny skeletons of young babies as well. This was the monastery, or the town even, graveyard. And I was speaking to a few of them, and one of them told me of a grave she excavated of an infant that seemed to have too many shroud pins. So I thought, you have to write a poem about that, and it's written in the voice of the archaeologist. An infant burial. Infants take much longer. Their bones fragile, faint, more difficult to dig. I spent 2 days with makeup brush and trowel, while my workmate recorded progress, drew each bone of the emerging skeleton. When I had finished every scrap on view, I joined the other diggers, who one by one had left their cuts to stand above it, stare in admiration or remembrance. Some judged age, agreed on 2. I didn't care by then, worn out, spent that restless night brushing soil from friendly skulls, staring at their smiles. Next morning, back at the site, I analysed my finds tray, shocked to count so many shroud pins, tarnished and slight, 10 from my burial. We searched and found the books suggested that the norm was 4, and our past experience on this ground confirmed that. It was worrying. Although I had been methodical, I may have missed an infant, failed to notice the ghostly trace of decay. But it was time to lift, bag bones for later lab work. On my knees that evening, packing the final flimsy pieces in their labelled bags, I realised these desolate parents, the care these desolate parents took to wrap their transient gift. How well they sealed its shroud with abundant pins, to equip the body for its long and silent wait until we reverently raised it up. I have a poet friend in Canada, and one Sunday evening she emailed me saying that when she was getting the dinner ready that day, she had sliced her finger and cut herself badly. And she added in the email, "I am dangerous with knives." And I thought, what a lie. So I wrote, "Swordswoman. She is dangerous with knives. The innocent slicing of whole grain bread turns so easily to slaughter. Fresh blood spurting, the linen tablecloth ruined, and the children terrified. When her enthusiasm for action overrides her manual dexterity. It's time to stand back, put on the armour of indifference, the helmet of deafness, and pray that the object of her attention offers no resistance, no awkward bone or stiff sinew to deflect her eager blade. The only consolation is that she is more likely to self-harm, to slice the tip of her pointing finger, than to harm a lover or an innocent captive visitor. And yet you are drawn to her, fascinated by the light flashing from her blade, the chance that this time she might get it right. Deposit each slice inch perfect on your plate. Well worth this terrible, wonderful anxiety. Still, prudence suggests caution when she unsheathes her cutlery. Okay, I'm going to slightly indulge myself now by reading this poem, which is more recent and I've never read in public before. And it's called The Queen and the Stone, 2011. And of course 2011 saw the visit of Queen Elizabeth to Ireland, which was a momentous occasion, an event, and in a way drew a line under decades, even centuries of trouble. And it was particularly wonderful to see her standing, paying tribute to the dead of the Irish War of Independence, those Irish people who had fought against the British government, obviously at the time. It was a wonderful feeling of reconciliation and ending. The following day, I've written considerably about the Irish War of Independence as well, and I was still researching. And the following day I was in Dublin at the National Library researching the War of Independence in where I come from, which is Sligo originally. And she was just across the way in the government buildings talking to the government. And in my briefcase I had a large stone. And there was a cordon of police. And I was lucky to get through that cordon of police with the stone. And the poem explains about the stone and so on. So I won't double explain. The Queen and the Stone, 2011. The day the Queen of England visited government buildings in central Dublin, I dodged through police cordons to the National Library next door to research the War of Independence. In my briefcase, laptop, pencils, blank sheets, and a large red stone. The stone belonged to my American cousin. She forgot it in my car boot after I took her to see the decaying cottage which her gracious grandmother left to join sisters, brothers, aunts and uncles in America. My noble grandfather stayed, by primogeniture, inherited the whole empire. 3 fields, 1 garden, cottage, cowshed, dunghill, and turf rights to Carrowlotton Bog. A souvenir, she said, a slab of solid Sligo, and took a piece of red sandstone from the remains of the kitchen wall. I approved, blessed the red relic. While Her Majesty chatted with ministers of state, I researched press reports of ambushes, reprisals, gunmen's lame excuses, government's denials, the long catalogue of inaction, disinterest, and knavish tricks of her grandfather's government. In the local newspaper, I found a paragraph about her great-grandfather's arrest in the cottage by her grandfather's auxiliary police. The work done, the fuss over, I met her and passed the stone. Some facts are set in stone. Buckingham Palace has 775 rooms. That cottage had 3 rooms, 4 if you count the loft. This poem comes from a visit to the Lake District and Dove Cottage, Grasmere, Wordsworth's place. And I was really fascinated by the fact that the tea rooms there, beside Dove Cottage, near the centre, actually was serving pizza. And I just thought something about that just doesn't seem right. It seems so incongruous. And there was an incident there while I was there. And the poem is partly true, like, you know, we poets take things and change them slightly. And that happened here. So it's not quite the way I tell it, but it sounds better the way I tell it. Irish poet at Grasmere. At the Dove Cottage tea rooms, they couldn't find the gentleman who ordered the spicy beef pizza. In vain, the serving girls scouted tables, argued, while the dish cooled and the cooks became embroiled. In desperation, one took command, called out his description: solitary, tall, balding, bearded, handsome. All the other diners gawked at me, but I denied all knowledge of such an offbeat order, pointed out my cup of English tea, the second slice of Cumberland tea cake. Slowly they turned away, pretending to believe. Donal will warn me of that. Right. Okay, the collection is called The Age of Glass. And this, if you like, is the title poem. The Age of Glass. This is the age of glass. Sheets suspended at the sides of rooms. They are the sides of rooms. Mirrors and windows expose our insides, gaping to daylight. Our frontage has collapsed, as if an earthquake has quivered through a poor quarter, left all rooms three-walled, every nook naked, intimacies on general display. And light seeks us out, rampages through monstrous panes, rebounds from silvered sheets, makes day and night irrelevant, dazzles us all. To sin in secret is impossible, so we surrender in public, purchase service, companionship, casual words over coffees, dearer than you might imagine. The price of reflection is discontent, of transparency, invisibility. Caught in the full-length glare, we are lost in numberless reflections, desolate splinters, anonymous among thin, transparent millions. When there's momentous events, poets feel that you should write something about them, commenting on them. Other people sometimes feel that poets should write, like, what are you going to write about this? So this was written after the Charlie Hebdo killings in Paris. And being retired and having, in theory, nothing to do, I sat all day watching news coverage of that, and it was amazing to find all these experts being rolled out, giving opinions about why this happens, what should we do, what has caused it, and so on. And in the end, you're no wiser than you began. So I said, I'm going to write a poem, and I'm going to invent my own experts. Paris, January 2015. My uncle, the retired general, is comfortable with distant deaths, long-range desert puffs set off by some video game freak's remote control. But he is shocked by these live, efficient killers stalking his favourite European capital, seeking revenge for something he says he never did. He thinks the shooting has to stop. My nephew's wife, the stand-up comedian, is stunned by the speed of the unslouching beast we have unleashed, how it strikes our fragile enclave of unbelief, attacks our only freedom, disrespect for all. Shocked that we are the real butt of our jokes, our hollow props collapsing one by one. She thinks the laughing has to stop. My brother-in-law's cousin in the rag trade complains that the hungry poor remain hungry in spite of all our preaching, all our advice on how to live and rule, the political catechism to adopt, our generosity in helping develop their natural wealth, share their bounty, correct their irrational, unhelpful beliefs. She thinks the giving has to stop. My grandson, who wants to be a politician, wonders what it's all about. asks my opinion. I search for one. Repeat the media mantras: free speech, tolerance, values, the claptrap of the comfortable faced with threats to their soft security. He frowns, asks about the possibility of training to be an astronaut. He thinks the playing has to stop. And as for me, a poet whose wan verses challenge nothing, I change the channel. Search for comfort, test match, cookery, quiz show, find only comedy and mockery. My granary is full, my freezer well stocked, my winter oil supply secure. I sit here, try to ignore the screaming in the streets. I think the thinking has to stop. My daughter came home from Australia about 3 years ago on holiday with her 4-month-old son, my grandson, my Australian grandson. And she was only home for 3 weeks, and I found it very difficult to get much time with him because she was very attentive. But finally, the lure of shopping centres took her and her mother away and left me in charge. She was very reluctant, and it was obvious she didn't trust me. I had raised her. They don't trust you. So this poem is called Under Surveillance. The monitor shows him on his right side, hands tight together, placid, a slight rise and fall of his chest. Queries by text from the shopping centre. Stirring? Crying? Up yet? Keep my eyes fixed on the screen. 16 minutes later, he waits, stares at something bright, deflating balloons or shelf of bears. I come alive, prepare the baby bottle, 5 spoons of formula, microwave for 20 seconds. After his feed, we gurgle nonsense, swap giddy laughs, brief glee in each other's company. In reply to, awake? Ounces? Nappy? I take and send a selfie. 2 males, both happy, one exultant. There's a sort of a quote from Yeats there at the end, just to show off a little bit. The final section of my book is called Gerontology, which, as you know, means the study of old age, for obvious reasons. This poem is called Secret. I knew they knew a secret. The men who leaned on 5-bar gates, or paused while weaving baskets or welding steel, to exchange words about the weather, the crops, and the situation in Indochina. I never asked, understood my place. And those women who stopped their knitting, calf feeding, pruning, or vermin shooting, to stare not at mountain rims or state plantations, but at something else, much further off, closer. I tried to imagine, failed. Now, an old man, I rest on shovel or boundary wall, admire what is before me, neighbours' flowers, cars racing down a motorway, yachts sheltered in a harbour, grandchildren I won't see grow up. I know no secret. And this, I suppose, refers to the Irish way of death, or the Irish way of funerals and wakes and all of that. Baking. Before I am dead 3 hours, the smell of baking will rise like incense from the semi-detached houses in this housing estate. Mixing bowls will moan as they fold in cream flour, free-range eggs, buttermilk, and a selection of dried fruits. Streetlights will blink in disbelief as ovens are preheated in unison then lumbered with the dead weight of dough. When cool to the touch, the golden fruits of labour will be wrapped, borne, and handed over with words of consolation. Our kitchen table will be heaped, and for 3 days and 3 nights, grateful mourners will enjoy the rich crust of friendship and tradition. Then, all the empty flour bags, milk cartons, eggshells, and used bun cases will be binned for collection Wednesday morning. By that night, beginning to decay.
Oh.